Welcome back to Storyteller. Today we are going to listen to Skinwalker stories. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. A little background first. I was serving a 15-year sentence in a penitentiary in southern Arizona. What I was in there for isn't important. During my stay there were countless things that happened that no one could explain, and even more that no one wanted to know more about. It all started with a prison legend. Supposedly, years ago something awful and unexplainable happened in the prison. Every morning we'd be woken up and expected to stand near the front of our cells while guards visually confirmed we were present and accounted for. Apparently about a year before I got sent there, the most brutal and unexplainable thing happened during one of these routines. A man who had a cell to himself looked very off during this check. When a guard pulled over another guard to help him check it out, they found it wasn't actually the prisoner they were expecting at all. It was a totally different man. This man was wearing the skin of the other man over him. Loosely fitting, draped over him, apparently looked like a real monster. The scariest things was the guy wearing the skin was not an inmate. They had no idea how he even got into prison, let alone a cell. What's worse is that they couldn't even figure out who the hell he was. He wasn't documented anywhere. And what's worse than that? They never even found the body of the man of the skin he was wearing. Pretty grisly stuff, I know. And I realize that's not the go-to definition of a skinwalker, but that's what the prison called him. The Skinwalker. Didn't help that the guy never talked apparently. Anyway, that's what started the whole Skinwalker superstition around the yard. Apparently the guy got shipped to a different spot about a month after it happened, and just about everyone in Gen Pop felt all the better for it. I heard about the story on the second day of my stay. Hell of a story to hear to place in your home for the foreseeable future. Now on to the real shit though. Sure, that guy was the Skinwalker, but all he did in the long run was get an old lifer Navajo inmate to tell everyone about actual skinwalkers. It seemed like a lot of the prison culture actually revolved around them. Now, apparently, skinwalkers are tricky to point out on the spot, but if you manage to survive around one for more than a minute or two, almost everyone can tell the mannerisms are all off. They can mimic human speech but not replicate it. They twitch manically. They have an unnatural gait while walking. But apparently they got better with experience. The old Navajo guy, his name was Carl, said that he was sure there was an actual one among the prisoners. Slowly picking us off over the years. He called it the Grandmaster Skinwalker at one point. Apparently he thought it had human mannerisms down so well that you might not even be able to tell if it was your cellmate for a day or two. It had to be good, he posited one night. He would expect a skinwalker to jump at any opportunity for a kill. But this one realized it had a revolving door of people to kill coming to it, and masterfully bided its time, as Carl thought, for years. A lot of guys found humor in it. A lot more were really on edge about it. Every once in a while in prison, people snap. Sometimes you'll find your cellmate swinging in front of your bunk, strung up around the neck by his pant leg. Sometimes you just can't take it anymore. But in our yard, people tended to snap in a very special way. It wouldn't be an outburst at dinner, or a silent suicide in the night. Guys would just stop talking, hunch over and shuffle around. Any friendships they had would be mostly out the window. They would turn into a loner during rec time. They would let their hair hang in front of their face. No one liked to talk about it. Like if they did, it would happen to them next. I felt the same way. I didn't know if it was a skinwalker or just people going crazy. But I didn't want to find out. It wasn't clockwork or anything, but every time someone snapped in this way, it wasn't more than a couple weeks before they were shipped off or transferred to God knows where without anyone else knowing beforehand. Then there was the nighttime occurrences. Short, loud bursts of sound echoed through my cell block during all hours of the night on a regular basis. It sounded like a mix between a pig's dying squeals and nails on a chalkboard. Just another thing no one liked to talk about. Even scarier were the shadows and footsteps. The block was dimly illuminated in the night by a few lights hanging from the ceiling outside the cells. I myself saw shadows flit across my walls on a regular occasion, when there were definitely no guards near my cell. One time near the end of my sentence, I woke up, looked at my back wall and found a perfect silhouette of a person standing there, but when I looked, my bunkmate was asleep, and no one was outside my cell. And the footsteps. Everyone hated the fucking footsteps. They were the scariest part. In the night, sometimes, more rarely than the shadows, you would hear ungodly fast footsteps. They sounded like wet feet slapping on tile floor. Whatever caused them would fly from one end of the block to the other in a dead sprint. Whatever it was inhumanely fast. If you happened to be awake before it started, by the time you heard the footsteps on one side of your cell and whipped your head around to see the thing run by, it sounded like it was 3 cells past you. Everyone hated the footsteps. I agreed, I thought they were the worst. I was released from that place about a month ago, and I have more stories than I can count. I swear it was nearly my turn. About a week before I was discharged, my cellmate and a good friend of mine snapped. In the same kinda way. I didn't sleep for an entire week. Well, I did sleep of course, but never for more than a few minutes at a time. Never turned my back on the guy. The scariest thing? I woke up one night to him somehow snaking his body through the bars of our cell. For reference, I couldn't get anything past my shoulder through them. The worst part though, he was coming back into our cell. On the day of my release I didn't say a word to him. Just laughed. He seemed fine with it, so was I. I had made it through 15 years of prison fights, gang disputes, and for all I know, Skinwalker abductions. I left through the front gates, a free man. As I walked along the fence for the rec yard, I spotted my cellmate, standing off on his own, like he had for the last week or so. I shook my head, not even really sure if it was him anymore. I took one last look over the yard, this time from the other side of the fence. I wish I hadn't. There, standing off on his own, on the other side of the yard, was Carl. Slouched over, eyeing the other inmates, and twitching manically. This is a story my family told me when I was growing up. We live in a rural community on the Navajo reservation. My aunt and her 2 brothers were home alone while my grandparents had left for the evening to attend a chapter house meeting. They were in the house and like many people from the reservation they didn't have electricity. It had been dark outside for about an hour and my aunt and my uncles were getting ready for bed. Outside they heard noises, as if someone moving things around outside. My oldest uncle went to look out the front window and saw a figure out by the truck. This was immensely out of the ordinary because the closest neighbor was miles away. Whatever it was opened the truck door and began to dig through the personal items that my family had left in the vehicle. My aunt and uncles were frightened by the sight and knew that they should take action. They took out the rifle and all steadied themselves to hold it up. They flung open the door and aimed the gun at the dark figure. The figure turned and started to walk towards them, totally unfazed by the weapon. My uncle pulled the trigger but nothing happened. The figure drew closer and my aunt began to smell something like a rotting corpse. It was so strong it made her gag. My uncle continued to pull the trigger with no luck and the figure came closer and closer. Off to the distance, headlights were coming up the road. My grandparents were returning. The figure looked toward the lights and started to move away and tucked itself behind a tree near the house. My oldest uncle ran toward the truck with the gun. My grandfather got out of the car and my uncle pointed to the tree. The thing was poking out its head to observe what they were doing. My grandfather ran into the house and over to the stove and grabbed a handful of ashes and rubbed over the gun and placed an ash-covered bullet into the chamber. He walked out onto the porch and fired toward the tree. Whatever that thing was didn't expect the gun to go off. The gunshot echoed and the dark figure began running. My grandma chased my aunt inside and my uncles and my grandfather went after it. There weren't many roads or paths, so as my grandfather and uncles chased after the figure, the truck was bouncing and the headlights were not fixed on one particular spot. My uncle swears that whenever the headlights would hit the figure he saw a woman, not only that. Whoever it was running on all fours like a bear. My grandfather eventually stopped the truck and as they neared the ditch that drops about 20 feet. He got out and began to yell in Navajo. My uncle says that he was yelling about a local woman. He yelled that he wasn't scared and that he knew it was her and to leave his family alone. A few days passed and there was news that the woman that my grandfather was yelling about had passed. I've always been told that if you know who the Skinwalker is, say their name, and it will kill them. Unsure of it. That's my first thought, at least. I do tend to jump to outlandish conclusions. No one else seems to have even picked up on any change. They're all too preoccupied, messing about with the fire, chatting shit. But I see. I always notice the little things. And Emily has changed. Is everything okay, Em? I call over. As I said, my mind, in these sorts of situations, always jumps instantly to the craziest, most ludicrous, most far-fetched explanation possible, as a general rule, but I'm not insane. The sun is setting, and the fire has begun to cast strange and flickering shadows across the faces of the people around it. There are 6 of us here, high school kids. Robbie's just passed his driver's test and he's driven us all out into the wild, our first big outing as a group. Camping, in the forest. Emily does not respond. She does not even look up. She just stands awkwardly at the edge of the clearing, staring into the flames. I glance around at the others. They're all chattering away. Robbie's flirting with Ariana, I see, with a stab of sharp jealousy. I don't know if he's not getting my hints or if he's just not interested. And the other 2, Kyle and Kai, are both trying and failing to roast their sticks of beef jerky above the fire. Kai swears and grimaces as his piece tumbles pitifully from the stick and is lost to the flames. I sigh, and I rise, walking cautiously over to where Emily is standing. Emily, I say softly, reaching out a hand to her shoulder. Emily turns to look at me, expressionless. I'm not sure why, but my skin crawls. It feels like she's looking right through me. Emily is one of my favorite people. She's so funny, so bubbly. She's the one who came up with the whole idea to go camping in the first place. We're in a part of the state I've never been to before, but Emily has. She's been camping here with her parents. She thought it would be really fun for us to come here all together. And so far, it has been. Emily, I say again softly, what's wrong? But as before, Emily does not respond. Her face remains completely still. She gives me no body language at all, and I can't help but nervously laugh a little, giving her a playful shake. Talk to me, girl. Hello? Are you okay? The sky has begun to fade from red to a deep purple as the sun disappears below the horizon. Curious, unseen birds chirp in the distance beyond the surrounding, encircling treeline. Okay. Emily replies after a pause, startling me. Another anxious laugh escapes me and I tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. So, everything's okay? I ask. Everything is okay. She replies. Sweet, I breathe. Okay, well that's good, but I don't really know what else to say. The girl's acting weird as fuck. Where's the firewood, Em? I ask, gesturing down to her empty hands. Emily does not move. Emily. I say, a little louder now. Some of the others turn to look over. You're freaking me out. Stop fucking around. Where's the firewood? The firewood, she repeats quietly. Yo, you didn't bring back any wood, Emily? Kyle calls over to us. What were you even doing out there? Kai mutters something under his breath and makes a crude gesture, and the boys suppress snorts of laughter and childish giggles. Ariana throws an empty can at him, which he bats away playfully. Emily makes a noise in response. A noise which sets the others off chuckling. It puts them at ease and they return to their conversations. But I am not at ease. All the fine little hairs across my forearms, up the back of my neck, they suddenly stand on end in terrible, chilling unison. The sound that Emily makes was clearly supposed to be a laugh. The others were only half paying attention, shouting over their shoulders, but I was looking right at her. Right at her. And she didn't smile. Her eyes remained wide open. The laugh was completely, utterly hollow. And it was a carbon copy of my own, forced uncompromisingly through Emily's vocal cords. I just stare back at her, and for a moment it is only us. No forest, no sunset sky, no birds beyond, and no budding stars. Just me and her. The tension is broken when Ariana calls us over to sit down. Emily turns at the sound of her name, and goes to sit by the edge of the fire upon being summoned. My heart is hammering dangerously in my chest, and I reach for my pocket, taking a breath from my inhaler. I try to do it subtly. I hate Robbie seeing me do it. But honestly, I've got bigger things to worry about right now. What the fuck was that? Is this some kind of sick prank? I guess it could be. I glance around for subtly placed cameras, for carefully angled phones. Maybe the group are in on a joke of some kind. The thought makes me instantly self-conscious. I've always been insecure about being left out of stuff, but I can't see a thing. And besides, it's getting too dark now anyway. I consider going to sit down with Robbie and Ariana, and now Emily, do a bit of cock blocking, but I decide against it, and sit down with the boys instead. I only half take part in their conversation. I can't help constant glances over to Emily. She's just sat there, expressionless most of the time, and barely speaking. I just can't for the life of me shake this feeling in my gut that something is terribly, terribly wrong. Hey, Earth to sister? Kai knocks me on the shoulder and I turn to him. You okay, Cassie? You've gotten so quiet all of a sudden. I've gotten quiet. I reply, perhaps with a bit more force than I meant to, and the guys raise their eyebrows in surprise. I blush a little. Sorry, I say, have you guys noticed anything weird with Emily, lately? Ever since she came back from the woods she's been acting all different. Kai brushes his long, messy fringe from his eyes and shoots a glance to Kyle. An unspoken message seems to pass between the two and Kyle rolls his eyes. Kyle looks back to me to speak. Are you sure you're not just jealous that she's over there talking to Robbie? I flush suddenly and swear at him. He laughs and I shove him away. Shut up, Kai. What are you talking about? Come on, Cassie, everyone knows, Kyle whispers behind his hand. I breathe out a sigh of distress. Does Robbie know? I ask. Kyle responds in the negative, but I'm not sure I believe him. From there the conversation grows and develops in natural little shoots, and I get lost in it. I forget for a while about my uncertainty regarding Emily. I lose track of time. We start to pack up and prepare for bed. Tonight's the settling in night. We'll start on the real underage drinking bonanza tomorrow. As we're all shuffling around, gathering our things and throwing the last of the sticks onto the fire, hoping that there'll be sufficient embers in the morning to get it started again easily enough, I decide to speak to Robbie real quick. Just a brief chat, to put me in his mind before he goes to sleep. Hey, Robbie. I say to him, pushing out my chest a little as he turns to me. He looks so good in the glow of the fire, the angles of his face illuminated in rippling orange. Hey Cass, you all sorted for tonight? Yeah, I think so, I say. Do you think that dash? But he cuts me off. He leans in close. Hey, Cass, did you notice anything kinda weird about Emily earlier? Emily. And I realize what an idiot I've been. Oh shit, yeah, I did. Where is she now? Robbie, where's Emily? I'm not sure, he replies, then straightens, and calls out to the bustling shadows beyond the fire. Hey, Emily? Have any of you guys seen Em? Oh, yeah, Kyle replies. She went to get more firewood with Kai. Ariana snorts from her position by the logs. Good to see her actually doing some work, but I don't laugh. In fact, I start to feel terribly cold, chilled despite the night's latent warmth. How long ago did they leave? I ask desperately. I can't seem to organize my thoughts. Something is wrong, something is very, very wrong, but I just can't vocalize what that thing is. Kyle steps closer to the fire and shrugs. I dunno. Like 10 minutes, maybe? I run past him to the edge of the clearing. I squint my eyes, looking out into the darkness, listening for voices, for a stray beam of a flashlight, but there is nothing. Guys? I call out, guys. And I am answered by nothing but the ripple of the breeze through the branches.